Hello and welcome to this Herald special of our Euro podcast. I'm here, Jonny McFarlane, with Graeme, McGarry and Matthew Lindsay out in Germany. Boys, welcome to the pod. We've got loads to talk about, some news. First up right away, we'll go to you, Matthew. What's been happening today on the injury front?
Well, hi, Jonny and Graeme. A good bit of news on the injury front with Scotland. I went down to training this morning. The first 15 minutes were open to the media. So, obviously, the big news yesterday was Andy Robertson limping off early on in the open training session. It was open to the public. Lawrence Shankland also went off. Kenny McLean didn't take part in training, and Stuart Armstrong didn't take part in training either. So all four of them took a full part in training this morning. We spoke to John Carver yesterday, and we said Robertson and Shankland, it was just precautionary. Kenny McLean was just had a little bit of a niggle, and Stuart Armstrong was continuing his rehabilitation from a long-term injury. He expected them all to be back in training, and sure enough, they all were. The one guy that was missing today was Ryan Jack, which, given his injury situation, his injury history, was a little bit concerning. But again, similar with Robertson, Shankland, McLean, and Armstrong, it's nothing major. It's just I think, given what Ryan Jack has been through in recent months, he has his own sort of personal fitness program that he's working on. He's come back. He's played against Gibraltar. He's played against Finland, and I just think they wanted to give him a rest. So no concerns there either. We were up at the ice stadion where Scotland have been doing their media stuff to speak to Scott McKenna, and a lot of the Scotland boys, a lot of the Scotland squad members were there doing some stuff for the sort of SFA official media channels, and Ryan Jack was one of them, and he looked in good spirits. So yeah, I think it's all pretty good news, Jonny.
Well, that's good. Certainly good to hear that those guys from yesterday are back. And Ryan Jack, Graeme, he is the one midfielder amongst that selection that you look at and you think, he's a guy you can rely on defensively. He's a natural defender. He sniffs out danger. He's been doing that for many years. You look at players like Billy Gilmore and Callum McGregor, they're deep-lying playmakers as opposed to kind of natural defenders. They're all on the front foot. They're thinking about putting the ball forward. Ryan Jack is much more of a kind of defensive, natural player. And in that sense, if you're hanging on to a 1-0 lead against Hungary with 20 minutes to go, he's going to potentially be an important player off the bench, I would imagine. We know that Steve Clarke likes him. Do you see that, or do you see him potentially maybe even shocking people and actually getting some minutes from the start in any of these games?
I don't think he'll start, Jonny. No, I think that midfield is pretty set, particularly for the first game. I think you're going to see the big hitters there that Clark's been relying on. You'll see Gilmore, McGregor, McTominay, and you'll see McGinn. I think that's four people who are nailed on in that area. However, I do agree. I think Ryan Jack brings something a wee bit different to the rest of the guys. I think me and Matty were speaking about this briefly in the Finland game. The midfield's packed with technical footballers, really good players, so comfortable in the ball. And I'm not saying Ryan Jack isn't those things, but he does have that other side of his game where you can rely on him in a defensive situation and he can come on and protect the lead. Didn't work out that way on Friday night, unfortunately, but he does have that. And listen, as you say, Clarke has used him in that way in the past, and I think he relies on him, and he knows he can rely on him. And I think he'll play a big part in the tournament, Ryan. Off the bench, probably, though. I think, as you say, if there's a scenario where we're holding on for a draw or we've got a 1-0 win against Hungary or Switzerland, I think that's when you'll see him. Or hopefully on Friday when we're hanging on to a 1-0, you'll see him and probably Porteous and that coming on as well, just to shore it up. But yeah, I think he's got a massive part to play in this. I think he's the one guy in the squad who there was a bit of debate about whether he'd be one of the ones to be chopped out when the two men were taken off at the end there. But I had a wee sneaking suspicion that Ryan might survive, and I think it's because of the reasons you said. I think he's a real different option to the guys we've got.
Yeah, and in terms of the camp, Matty, what's the kind of mood today? It's clearly been quite upbeat in your missive so far, but things are starting to get to that sort of squeaky bum time moment. You've got 3 more sleeps, as it were, until the big one. Do you sense any nerves at all, or is it just very much continuing along that kind of positive vibes feeling?
Yeah, just continuing along positive vibes feeling. I mean, boys looked as though they were having a great laugh today. The first the training session yesterday was open. The training session today wasn't. The first 15 minutes of it were open to the media, and then we had to leave. So we were only there when they were just kind of warming up and getting into it, but they were having a right carry on and a laugh. I imagine once we left, that maybe would have changed. Everybody that we've spoken to has said that the intensity of the training sessions that they are doing has increased significantly in recent days, because they're now getting down to business. It's very real now. They're in Germany. The Euro 2024 opener against Germany is just days away. So yeah, I think it's all starting to feel very real for them now, and that's been reflected in how they're going about their business.
And in terms of Garmisch itself, is there a sense that Scotland are very satisfied with their choice of base? Seems like everyone's having a good time there, from journalists' Twitter accounts to the players themselves. As you say, they look like they're pretty happy. Is there a sense that this has been a really good camp and that we're not going to see a Roy Keane-style explosion from someone unhappy with the conditions and the SFA's choice?
No, I think I don't think there's any likelihood of that happening. Yeah, I think that they've settled in really well. I mean, we all saw the reception in the Bayern Hall on Sunday night, where John McGinn did his now famous Bavarian dance with a few members of the local Oompa band. And the open training session yesterday was fantastic as well. There was a lot of the locals turned out, and along with a lot of Tartan Army guys. Yeah, I think they've gone about things the right way. They've welcomed the locals in, and the locals have welcomed them. So yeah, but I think they've done that. I think they had to do that, and they did do that. But now it's purely focusing on the football and getting on with preparing for the Germany match on Friday night.
Interestingly, lads, I did hear one or two wee murmurs coming out about the Switzerland camp today. They weren't too happy with the training pitch that they've got, and apparently it's coming apart because it's just been newly laid. So you never know how much to read into these things, but hopefully that's a wee fly in the ointment for them.
Yeah, hopefully they're about to fall apart. Hopefully the captain there will
injuries go on.
The manager, before you know it, will be favourites going into that game against Switzerland. But let's just see how it pans out. Going to talk now a little bit about the defence. We're going to move away from what's happening in the camp today and just assess where we stand in terms of Scotland going into this game. We're going to start with the goalies first, then move on to the defenders. We'll leave the midfielders and forwards for the next couple of days. I just think there's a lot to talk about in this area. Goalie, first of all, perhaps less so, given that Craig Gordon's not going to be there. He would be one that I would imagine a lot of guys watching on would be considering whether or not a fit Craig Gordon might be the best shout. I certainly would be, given his experience, how he's performed for Scotland. And then I saw the Finland game. You start to say to yourself, well, maybe it's understandable. Guys hardly played, looked very rusty to me. But the guys that are there, Xander Clark of Hearts, Angus Gunn of Norwich City, Liam Kelly of Motherwell. Graeme, I'll go to you. You know Liam Kelly very well, but is there any danger that Angus Gunn isn't the number one going into this game against Germany?
No danger at all. As much as I'd love Liam to get a shout in there, just purely from a Motherwell perspective. No, Angus Gunn's the number one, and I think if Craig Gordon was there, he would play regardless. I think he was good throughout the campaign from when he came in. I think obviously he had a bit of a horror show in the Leeds United playoff game. He lost 4 goals at Ellen Road, and a couple of them you could have said were his fault. But I think for Scotland, he's been faultless so far. I think he's been really good, and I don't see any situation, any conceivable situation where he isn't pulling the gloves on in Friday night.
Yeah, Matty, I take it you are of a similar ilk. You think it's Angus Gunn? He's never let Scotland down, I don't think, and he's always looked pretty confident, pretty competent, and certainly speaking to a Norwich City fan friend of mine, very, very confident performer in the Championship, someone who's been, I think, well liked over the years down at Norwich, and someone who performs at a pretty high level consistently.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of you. I think it's a no-brainer. Angus Gunn plays at high level regularly. He's played superbly well for Scotland since making his debut against Cyprus in the Euro 2024 qualifying opener. I disagree with you about how he hasn't put a foot wrong for Scotland. I think the Netherlands game, I thought he was at fault for the opening goal. I thought he could have done better. I think that, but that, listen, let's not be too harsh on the guy. I think that's the first mistake I've really seen him make. And you know, it was a great strike, so maybe we're being a bit harsh on him there. But I think that's a no-brainer. I was a little bit surprised about Craig Gordon getting cut. I thought maybe Liam Kelly would have been cut, but Steve Clarke said I think he's played something like 7 games since he suffered his double leg break in December 2022. He just felt it wasn't enough. And I understand that Clarke and Kelly have both been playing regularly. They've both played for the national team in the past. But hopefully Gunn, will start, and the other 2 won't be needed because he's our best goalkeeper by far.
I think Gordon. Sorry, Johnny, I was going to say that another thing to consider is if Gordon wasn't going to be the number one, to be a training goalkeeper at the age of 41, go over there for a month, been at a training camp for a month just to be a training keeper and get shots fired at you all day long. It's an awful lot, I think maybe at 28, Kelly's physically more up to it, and I think mentally as well. I think if I'm not saying Craig Gordon would be like this because he's the ultimate professional, but just going over there a wee bit sore that he's not playing, and just in terms of the harmony in the camp, and just for Craig, I think it was the right decision probably if he wasn't going to play, just to leave him at home.
Yeah, Liam Kelly very popular in the camp as well, so someone that clearly adds a lot to the day-to-day. It's one of those classic ones, isn't it, where we always think about Craig Gordon the last time that we saw him back in 2022. He was still performing really, really well for Hearts, and it's just natural. You think back to what you remember, but Steve Clarke's actually seen the evidence in front of him, and we don't have that because we're not watching all these training sessions. And that's obviously a major factor in what he's decided. So it's going to be interesting because there's 3 goalies there, and Angus Gunn, I think, as well you both will be the main man in the middle, and I suspect he'll have a fair bit to do in all 3 games, but especially the first one. So hopefully he can stand up to that. Let's just talk about the defenders then. In the squad, Liam Cooper, Grant Hanley, Jack Henry, Ross McCrory, Scott McKenna, Ryan Porteous, Tony Ralston, Andy Robertson, Greg Clark, and Kieran Tierney. I think we all know it's going to be a back 3. There's no point in kind of discussing the shape. At fullback, Andy Robertson's obviously going to be in there. On the other side, boys, do either of you have a strong feeling about who's going to take that position? Certainly from the way it shaped out in terms of Finland, that kind of felt like perhaps that Steve Clarke was moving towards a more fixed lineup. I might be wrong about that, but I suspect Tony Ralston will be first choice. Graeme, do you disagree?
No, I totally agree. I was over in Faro, obviously, and listen, Ross McCrory did okay. I think he was a wee bit tentative, which is probably expected on your Scotland debut. But I just think the greater experience that Ralston brings to the table, he's played Champions League. I know he's not played a lot of football for Celtic this year, but I just think he's got the experience, and I actually think he's a bit maligned as a player, unfairly. I think he's a good, solid choice. I think he played quite well against Finland, and definitely in a match of this magnitude, I think with what he's got under his belt, I think he'll go for Ralston, definitely.
It's a big loss, Matty. You look at Aaron Hickey and what, a £20-25 million player at least. That's what Brentford paid, and he's performed well in the Premier League since he arrived there, obviously before his injury. Nathan Patterson as well. I know he's been in and out, but I don't think there's any doubting that Nathan Patterson's a talent. He's got an engine, he can get up and down, and going forward, he can be electric. To lose both those players in the same area is really, really unfortunate. But Tony Ralston's there, and as Graeme says, perhaps a player that's just underrated. Ange Postecoglou took one look at him and propelled him into that first team at Celtic, and he was perhaps an unshown hero in terms of the way he went about that first season under Postecoglou. He kind of never left that position. Yeah,
I agree. I think that half season before Alistair Johnston came in, and under Postecoglou, when Postecoglou first came in, I thought he was really good. I think Johnston's been exceptional for Celtic, and Ralston suffered as a result of that. But I think he's a good footballer. I think he's had great games for Scotland in the past. I think he's shown that he can make the step up to international football and perform. I thought he was good against Finland. I'm cautiously optimistic about Ralston in that position. I certainly think he offers you a lot more going forward than Ross McCrory does, which is why he'll get in, because of his experience and because of that dimension to his game. Hickey is a huge loss. He was so good in Euro 2024 qualifying. Nathan Patterson's, let's be honest, he's really lost his way at Everton, but he has been great for Scotland in the past. But let's see what Anthony Ralston can do. It'll be interesting, and hopefully he rises to the challenge and justifies his selection.
Okay, well, we're all in agreement. We've got Andy Robertson and Tony Ralston as our fullback. So let's talk about the centre halves, because I suspect if there's agreement here, I'll be surprised. You look at that cohort of players. Let's start on the right first, because I suspect there might be a bit of agreement on the left. Graeme, who are you starting on the right side of the back three? There's obviously a number of options there. What's your first pick, and the one that stands out to you as the most obvious one for this game?
I think my first pick would be Jack Hendry on the right of the back three, and it's not based on Friday night, where I think he was quite poor. My worry would be, and I know that Saudi Arabia, the league is improving, and there's great talent within it, but I just worried a little bit about whether he's been softened up a little bit by his time out there, and he's not quite as sharp as what he was during the qualifying campaign at the start. I like Jack. I think he's a good player. I think he's physically, he's so impressive. He's good on the ball. I think he maybe fancies himself as a player above what he is sometimes. Plays a wee bit too much, but I look at the options, and I think Jack's done enough over the course of his Scotland career to get the nod for this game, definitely.
Matty, your thoughts?
I agree with Graeme and everything he said. I think he'll get the nod. He's experienced. He's a good footballer. Clark likes him. I also agree with what Graeme said. I don't know that going to Saudi Arabia has probably been it's not probably been. It's been good for his bank balance. I'm not sure that I don't know, but I'm not sure that it's been great for his football. I think I'd be happier if he was playing in a more competitive league in Europe. But listen, Jack Hendry played at Euro 2020. He'll not be overawed. Like a lot of the guys in the Scotland squad, he'll have benefited from that experience. I I don't know. I mean, there's a bit of a contrast between Jack Hendry and Grant Hanley, because Grant Hanley is your archetypal stopper. He's just a guy in there to defend. I think I'd be happier if Jack Hendry did that a little bit more. He tries to play a little bit too much football for me at times. I think he's your best shout there, and I think he'll get the nod.
Yeah, I agree with that in terms of Grant, in terms of Jack Hendry. To me, he overplays, and he's not got the quality to overplay. There's a sort of touch of the Lorenzo Amoruso about him, and nowhere near as good a player as Lorenzo, by the way. But from a point of view of just taking the ball out from the back and maybe getting yourself into trouble every now and again, I think that's something that kind of plagues his game. Now, against Germany, is it going to be handy to have a defender that can stride into the midfield? Probably, because there's going to be situations where you've got to try and turn them and get in behind them and cause them problems. But I just wonder if you'd be better having someone more naturally defensively sound in there. A Ryan Porteous, for example. I think Grant Hanley, I don't want him on the right side of my back three. I want him in the centre all the time, just for mobility. I think right and left of the central centre half, you want a bit more mobility, because those guys are going to get dragged out into the wide areas if the fullbacks are caught. So for me, I would have Grant Hanley in the middle. Now, I don't think he played well, particularly against Finland either. In fact, he was a bit of a bomb scare. But he likes the siege defending, and Germany will put us under enormous pressure at times. So I'm going to go for Grant Hanley and Ryan Porteous on the right, Grant Hanley in the centre. What do you guys think about the centre? Starting with you, Graeme.
Yeah, I think Hanley's a stick on. I think Clark really likes him. I agree with you about his performance on Friday, and I was a wee bit concerned after the game, because we spoke to him and he said obviously he's got a lot of time out during the season through injury, and he said it takes me a wee while to get going again and to get my angles right. And I was thinking, you don't really have a lot of time to figure it out, big man. But I think there's been a massive improvement in Grant Hanley. I was never a massive fan of him, probably up until the last Euros, round about that time.
He was brilliant against England, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he's developed this bursty pace for somewhere. I think he's got decent pace. As you say, he's just a big Clydesdale horse, isn't he? He just stand him in the middle, he'll header things away. I think he's a decent defender. And as you say, I think he's suited to this type of game where he has to be focused the whole time. I think it's when Grant Hanley's maybe not under pressure and he allows his mind to wander, that sometimes people can peel off the back of him, as you saw for Finland's first goal the other night, where he got caught under the ball. So I think he's a stick-on to play in the middle of the back three. It's an interesting point you raise about Porteous. I think he had a great record when he first came into the Scotland team. I think in his first 7 or 8 games, we only lost 1 goal, and that was the penalty against Norway. But he had a couple of kind of dodgier games after that. I think in the Netherlands, I think was probably his worst game for Scotland. So it's an interesting one, but I think Henry will get the nod there just because of the fact he can bring the ball out. I know we're kind of slagging him for overdoing that, but he did have one moment in the Finland game where he can stride it forward about 70 yards and then play the ball in and had Shankland in behind, so he has got quality. I like the blend of Henry, Hanley, and obviously I think we'll get to him, Kieran Tierney.
Yeah, well, that's a nice wee segue, so thank you for that, Graeme. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? Everyone's going to say Kieran Tierney on the left side of the back three. It's absolutely clear that that's what you do. Yeah. I suppose the question is, how does Scotland prevent themselves from becoming incredibly lopsided? You've got Tierney over there, you've got Armstrong, you've got Andy Robertson over there. How do you prevent teams from basically blocking you down that side and deliberately trying to channel all the Scotland attacks down the right, which is what any kind of even remotely sophisticated team will do? Now, Germany are not going to do that because Germany have too many attacking weapons to really worry about Scotland. I would imagine they'll just concentrate on their own game. But when you start to get into the other games, when you start to go against a team like Hungary, who on paper I think have got a pretty similar level of squad to Scotland. Switzerland maybe on paper look a little bit better, a little bit more strength and depth, but not an awful lot in it. My worry is you can neuter Scotland without Hickey and Patterson because you can force play down the right. What do you feel about that, Matty? Is that a concern?
I hear what you're saying. I think you're doing a wee bit of a disservice to Anthony Ralston. I think Ralston he's shown international level before that he's capable of getting forward, that he's capable of hurting teams. I think it's a great strength of his game. I mean, my only concern with Anthony Ralston is it's not his capabilities as a footballer, his ability to handle the occasion. It's just a lack of game time that he's had. I'd be far happier if he did a regular run of games with Celtic this season. We'll see what we get. We'll see what we get from him. I mean, obviously, Jack Hendry and Anthony Ralston are not Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson. I mean, Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson were sensational in qualifying. Robertson, for years, had this criticism that he didn't perform as well for his country as he did for his club, which was unfair when you look at how Liverpool play and the players that they've got to play that the way that they do. But in Euro 2024 qualifying, in those first 6 games, Tierney and Robertson were sensational. And both defensively and offensively, I think it was the best spell of form that the pair of them have had in international football. So, but you're talking about Liverpool left back, Arsenal / Real Sociedad left back. So you're talking about top level players. But I think Henry and Ralston will do fine. I think they're not Tierney and Andy Robertson, but I'm hoping that Ralston's going to rise to the occasion and show what he's capable of.
At the very least, Graeme, there are 2 players that can hurt teams. There's no doubt about that. If you get the ball down the left flank, the quality of delivery, the pace, the power, it's all there. Andy Robertson would get a game for the Germany side. Kieran Tierney might well get a game for Germany. That's the left back position is not their strongest, I don't think. So you're talking about genuine top performers. I think world class gets thrown about quite lazily nowadays, but they're in that conversation, especially Robertson, given what he's achieved for Liverpool over the last 5 or 6 years. And that's an area where Scotland are very strong. Listen, before we go, because we're on for 28 minutes and I've not asked about this, just in terms of the defence, Kai Havertz. Now, people will look at that and for Germany and say, look, I said this to Matthew yesterday, there's no Rudi Voller, there's no Oliver Bierhoff, there's not a sort of natural goal scorer focal point there, Graeme, but Kai Havertz, for me, is a guy who's going to cause problems with his movement because he does play that false 9 role. He is going to pick up positions in front of the back 3 that are going to make someone like Grant Hanley make decisions. And I just wonder who you think is best placed in that back 3. We've kind of roughly agreed that it's going to be Tierney, Hanley, and then Hendry. I'm going to give you Henry on the basis of 2 against 1. If we believe that's going to be the back 3, and I think it's probably a good shout, who's best placed to pick up that movement? Is it one of the centre backs, or are we talking about Callum McGregor or Billy Gilmore? Because my concern with that is neither of those 2 is a natural defensive guy who's going to. I suppose it's not. I think they're forward-thinking players, so they can do a defensive job. There's no doubt about it. But I'm just thinking, you only need to have a second if you're Kai Havertz, if you're of that quality. So who picks him up?
It's interesting that I would have been far happier if Big Fulkrug was playing, I've got to be saying. He's great quality, but it's the type of guy who Grant Hanley would love to go up against. It's that kind of contest. Havertz poses a different problem altogether, and I actually do think that there's going to be a massive onus on Callum McGregor to help pick him up. I think he's the one who's going to be asked, and he can do it. We've seen him do it for Celtic. He's played in that deeper role. I think it sort of blunts him a wee bit in terms of what his real strengths are, which is getting on the ball and dictating play. But with Billy Gilmore being in there, who I think he's going to have a real breakout tournament. I think the world's going to sit up and take notice of Billy Gilmour in this tournament. You watch him, and I think his quality is just off the charts for a Scotland player. Technical ability, something from a bygone age in terms of the Scotland squad. So I'm really excited about what he's going to do. And I think Callum McGregor's going to be asked to play a kind of more subordinate role. You know, I think he's going to be the one there to support Billy. He'll do the more defensive work, the kind of dirtier work, and Billy will try and get on the ball. So I think it'll be between sort of Henry and Tierney stepping out and McGregor stepping back. And we need to try and stop the supply into him. That's obviously a big thing. And that'll be McGregor's job to try and screen him, I think. But it'll be a team effort. I don't think one player can just go and nullify Kai Havertz, because he doesn't just sit in one position. He's not just going to sit in the number 10 role and allow himself to be picked up. It's going to have to be a collective thing. But yeah, as I said, I'd be far happier with Big Phil Krug just standing up the top and contesting headers with Big Grant.
Matty, that's me and Graeme solved Kai Havertz. Now it's over to you to solve Tony Kroos. Go. How do we solve that?
Well, just to pick up on, I agree with every word that Graeme said. I think the solution to Kai Havertz is Callum McGregor and Billy Gilmour. I think it's just dominating possession, and that's what those two do. And I think that's key to everything. I agree with you about Billy Gilmour. I mean, everybody goes on about the fantastic man of the match winning performance he had against England at Wembley at Euro 2020. You almost forget he didn't play in the first game, didn't play in the last game against Croatia because he got COVID. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do in all three games, and I think he will play in all three games. And I think the world's going to sit up and start taking notice of Billy Gilmour. So I think they are absolutely key. I mean, you know, fans love John McGinn. Scott McTominay had an amazing Euro 2024 qualifying campaign, scored a lot of goals, and they are huge players for Scotland, and they will be huge players in this tournament. But I think Callum McGregor and Billy Gilmour are going to be integral to how Scotland do at this tournament. And if they can perform to their maximum and dominate possession, then who knows what will happen.
Well, who knows indeed. We've got a lot of speculating to go. We've got another 2 days, tomorrow and Thursday, before the day arrives itself. And the excitement will no doubt be absolutely at fever pitch. It feels like pretty much everyone in Scotland is heading over there to Germany. I'm slightly dreading the prospect of Edinburgh Airport tomorrow morning. I've got my taxi booked for 2:45 to get there nice and early, Matthew. So I might be like a zombie next time you see me, but we'll see. I am looking forward to my pizza in Verona. So that might just make up for it. Now, listen, 278 people watching live, which is fantastic. Guys, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you do that, you'll get a notification when we go live. We'll be going live all throughout the tournament. When we're out there in Germany, we'll be going live doing stadium tours of each of the stadiums that Scotland will be playing in. We'll be having impromptu discussions about England, about the other teams as well. We're not just going to focus on Scotland, but we will have this core podcast taking place every single day of the Euros to discuss, first of all, the news from the camp and anything that's coming out about Scotland, but then also all the other things that are going on. I'm absolutely planning to be watching a lot of football during this, as I suppose everyone in the country will be too. So yeah, hit subscribe on that YouTube channel, and that will get you a notification to your phone or your device when we go live. Listen, thanks for everyone who's tuned in. It's been great to have you. Really enjoyable conversation. Thank you, Matty, out in Germany and Garmisch. You do seem like you're getting a little bit better. When I left you in Scotland the last time I saw you, I thought to myself, that man does not look well, but you're slowly but surely starting to look a little bit more like you're getting back to your old self.
That's nice to hear. That must be the mountaineer.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You know, the mountaineer, the Augustiner beer, perhaps.
Still not happening.
When's your first pint coming? That's the question.
Soon, hopefully. It's a ridiculous state of affairs.
Indeed. So listen, thank you for coming, Matthew. Graeme, thanks for coming on. And all the best. We'll catch up with you at some point, I'm very, very sure. So until next time, thanks for everyone for watching. Cheers.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Graeme. See you soon.